Average fisherman, or next wartime hero? Welcome back to the Speed Boost Investigation. I am your host, Camixs, and today we're going to be taking a look at the second line of the alphabet in the World of Warcraft universe, the Demon Hunter class. I have my man Marin Fellshade here to assist me in today's investigation. Marin, are you ready to get involved?
Fish? The fish? Why do they elude me? Is it because they're demon fish? I must know!
He'll be ready by the time we start. Anyway, before we begin, I'm sorry. Before we begin, if you don't know what the Speed Boost study is, I'll have a link in the intro right up above to this series for you to check out, as well as the current meta of where we are in the series. I believe I have only done Death Knights up until this point, but we'll expand on that soon enough. But with that out of the way, let's continue our study.
My demon hunters. With countless worlds burning in the Legion's wake, you answered the call. Yet these mortals in their ignorance have come to destroy their own salvation. Our time is short. I will deal with these intruders. You must venture to Mardoom and retrieve the Sargerite keystone. Now go. But remember, should you fail, all worlds will burn.
The Demon Hunters, a class of combining the skimpy elf races, putting green eyes and horns on them, and letting them have the powers of the very foes they face. This group of killing machines is yet another controversial hero class to be added to the World of Warcraft community. Necromancy, now Demonkin? Who would have thought the two factions would actually scoop so low? Not that any of us are really complaining. Released with the Legion expansion of World of Warcraft, the Demon Hunters were introduced as the second and most recent hero class in the game's history, having been introduced as a way to counter the demonic threat. Demon Hunters are unique in a few different senses, one being that they only have two playstyles at their arsenal, the lowest in the game. There's Havoc, the DPS spec, which focuses on mass AoE pressures on arena teams, as well as the Raging Burst in Metamorphosis form. And then there's the Vengeance, which is a tanking specialization that focuses on self-healing and preventing damage before it begins. Although Vengeance is not nearly as favored as Havoc, both specs have their place in the meta. The class has been game-changing in terms of how it's played, being hailed as one of the most mobile in the game and joining the ranks of the Leather Wearers with one too many bouncing moves to count. You can especially find that the Demon Hunters tend to excel quite well in player versus player, as since they are so mobile, they're able to catch up with their foes in combat with ease. Despite this, however, the speed boost we're going to be focusing on today is not of an instant nature. So if you're looking for someone to calculate things such as Fell Rush and Infernal Strike, then you will likely be related to a different video. But we're going to be taking a look at two particular speed boosts that have caught our eye, and with the rules we've set in the introduction of this series, will be calculated accordingly for your viewing pleasure. So with that in mind, let's take a look at our speed boost that we'll be focusing on today. The Demon Hunter class, unlike the Death Knights, are a lot more heavily focused on their mobility. While we're not looking at some of these abilities, it should be honorably mentioned that such a class is equipped with catching up to their enemies. In terms of Havoc, the DPS specialization has a few abilities to choose from when it comes to moving from one place to another. The list is almost too vast for us to go over, but we'll try our best to note what abilities are at the disposal of the Demon Hunters. Firstly, there's Fell Rush, which allows the player to charge forwards in a burst of speed, and has two charges to go on a recycling cooldown of 20 seconds. Then there's also the Vengeful Retreat, which allows the player to go backwards in a flipping motion to run away from foes. If you know about the Hunter's Disengage, it's similar to that, right down to the same meta pretty much. Metamorphosis allows the Demon Hunter to jump into a place of their choosing within a 40-yard radius. Fellblade, which can be spec'd into, allows the Demon Hunters to do a sort of jumping attack to attack their target from a 15-yard radius. Finally, there's Netherwalk, which allows the player to slip into immunity for 5 seconds and grants 100% speed increase during its duration. And even with all that, they still opt to give these speed demons the opportunity to slow and snare a target, offering Master of the Glaive as a perk to be spec'd into, which allows a Throw Glaive spell to slow an opponent by 50% for 6 seconds, and gives the ability to charge it. And if you thought we were done, then you haven't experienced the Vengeance Demon Hunter, which comes into its own plethora of toys and speed boosts for one to use if they wish to play the tanking spec of this otherwise mobile character. Some of the abilities are similar to Havoc's, things like Fellblade and Metamorphosis are prime examples of this, yet Vengeance comes with an ability such as Infernal Strike, which lets the Demon Hunter leap into the air at a 30-yard radius in any selected direction, and has 2 charges on 20-second cooldowns. But to even make this ability more potent, Infernal Strike can be enhanced by Abyssal Strike, a speckable perk that increases the yard range the Demon Hunter can jump, and reduces its cooldown by 8 seconds, making the rotation cycle 12-second intervals instead of 20. Then there's the Demonic Trample, which can be learned by the Demon Hunter as a PvP talent ability, allowing the class to charge for 3 seconds at 175% movement speed and sharing a cooldown similar to Infernal Strike. This also means that the Demonic Trample ability can actually be affected by the Abyssal Strike perk, reducing its cooldown from 20 seconds to 12 seconds if spec'd into it. And to top it all off, the Vengeance Demon Hunter can spec into Sigil of Chains, which reduces the movement of foes by 70% for 6 seconds, and it's affected by Sigil Mastery, which reduces the cooldown usage of any sigils by 25%. To put it lightly, these guys, regardless of which specialization you choose, are packed with abilities to enhance their place as one of the most mobile in the game. But out of all of these, 2 of them are going to be our focus for today's video, as they can be properly calculated by our rules. On the Havoc Demon Hunter side, you have Netherwalk. This ability can be spec'd into at level 104, 6 levels from when the Demon Hunter race actually starts at level 98. To refresh the synopsis status, this ability gives the player a 100% movement speed for 5 seconds. In exchange for this ability, you give up the opportunity to learn Desperate Instinct and Soul Rending, 2 abilities which are more prone to survival than speed. Then on the other side of the Vengeance Demon Hunter, we have the Demonic Trample, an ability that allows the player to move at a 175% charge for 3 seconds, and has 2 recycling charges on 20-second intervals, which again can be affected by Abyssal Strike to make it a 12-second interval. This ability becomes speccable at level 101 when the first PvP talent ability is unlocked to the Demon Hunter. You can take it as one of the 3 perks for the PvP talent. It should also be noted that while this is a powerful ability, it can only be used in player versus player combat, severely hindering its usages outside of raids, dungeons, and other instances that aren't battleground or arena related. However, if you're playing this game on War Mode difficulty, the ability does become useful in open world game. These 2 abilities safely have enough information on them where we can safely test what we want from them, which is the speed, distance, and time. Like I said in the beginning, if you're wanting a video where I go over the other movement abilities, leave a like and let me know in the comment section of the video. With that out of the way, we can take a look at what ability I'll be using to determine the math for this calculation. I decided to use Torment as the default Demon Hunter's taunt ability, because the fact that both specializations can use it, and that it has a 30-yard range, the guinea pig distance we use for measuring abilities. We have our 2 contestants, now let's go ahead and get to the testing. In case you're new to the speed study and have decided not to watch the speed boost introduction, I'll break down the test for you. We'll line ourselves up 30 yards away from a training dummy of choice within the class hall of the Demon Hunters. I'll use a few macros to ensure a timer and auto run are used simultaneously. Once we cover a 30-yard range between us and the training dummy, I'll press another button in order to stop the stopwatch from going over, so we can get a clear, precise, and accurate time. I'll also be using an outside stopwatch, not on screen, so that way you can get a confirmation. And to take it a step further, I'll be doing a test for each of the speed boosts about 5 times for good measure. From these 5 tests, each ability, I'll get the average, adding them all up and then dividing them by 5 in order to get the determining score. Then I'll take the average time score divided by 30, the yards we covered, and get the final speed time. I'll also check my work by getting the rest of the distance that we would have covered had the ability been let go to its full duration. Once this is all finished, we'll compare the 2 final scores with one another and then to those of the Death Knights as a bonus to see where our ranks have been archived on the scoring sheet. Yes, I do have an archive scoring sheet that will be available in the description for those of you wanting to bleed blowhorns and not sit through the test. Right then, who wants to start us off? Netherwalk, the Havoc Demon Hunter's movement speed. This ability is interesting in the sense that while it isn't necessarily faster than Wraithwalk, its effect to become immune for 5 seconds is marginally better for intensive purposes. Even so, the cooldown for use is double that of Wraithwalk's, which I guess makes them balanced in some way. I usually don't see too many Demon Hunters running Netherwalk. Maybe because they find the survival usage of the other two talents that it shares a specialization perk with more useful. Or maybe it's just the Havoc Demon Hunter has enough mobility perks to where it just doesn't need another one to add to its arsenal. Either way, we'll be trying to take a look at it in all of its glory. But first, I need to strip down the Demon Hunter so that way we can have a proper dance party in the Moon God's Wayfarer Rest Inn. No, wait, stop right there. No, Marin, I did not write that in the script. Just, why does this always happen? In all seriousness, the real reason I need to strip down the character is because of his mastery. You see, Havoc Demon Hunters get a passive speed increase depending on how much mastery you have. The higher the percentage, the better the speed increase is. With gear on, Marin's passive speed increase actually ends up at 15.1%. Which, if we're being honest, that would end up corrupting the numbers drastically. So in order to help ourselves, we can get rid of the armor he has and send him to his base mastery, which is about 14%. That still gives him a roughly 5% speed increase, but it's much more manageable than 15, and we'll try to account for the slight speed increase if we can help it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers we need for the first test. For all intensive purposes, I decided to use the Imprisoned Weaver and the Fell Hammer as my yard training dummy, since it has the smallest hitbox out of the rest of the dummies in the hammer. Also, our little stickman from the previous video evolved into an executioner overnight, and yeah, I just want to stay away from this thing as possible. Stupid dummy! Anyway, here's the macro I used for the test once I got myself up to a proper 30-yard range. The use Netherwalk ability starts the second I cast it on myself, the forward run macro will lock me in an auto run, and the stopwatch is here to, well, stop the stopwatch. I also have the second button to stop the stopwatch once we reach the training dummy, and again, I will be doing this 5 times to ensure the best results are made, which means standing here for 2 minutes while I wait for the ability to reset. Boy oh boy, am I having so much fun. Enjoy the small montage of me running around. No! Look! Marin! Again! Why did you... No, you're just supposed to be on the Fell Hammer, not the Wayfarer Rest Inn. Get out of there! Have fun. I certainly did. Here are the numbers of the attempts made on Netherwalk. As you can see, most of them fall between 2 and 2.5 seconds respectively. A couple of these seem to be a bit off, but that's what the extra tests are for, to balance out the possible outliers. In any case, we went ahead and averaged them out and got about a 2.24 rounded up from the 2.2396 second average. This gives us our first clue. 30 yards is about equal distance to the 2.24 seconds. Now with these, we can actually find the speed, taking the 30 yards and dividing it by 2.24 in order to get the speed total of 13.39 yards per second. That's quite a bit, definitely higher than Wraithwalk, but there is a problem. Remember that extra 5% speed increase we got earlier? Well, now we need to end up deducting it from this. Simply put, I'm going to reduce this number by 5% to account for that speed, ensuring that we can get a fair trial on this run. It's actually simple. By moving the decimal point of 2 points to the left, I can actually make it able to be multiplied. That means that the 5% will actually be multiplied to the 13.39 yards per second by a 0.05 interval. When you multiply these two, you get a 0.6695 or around a 0.67 as your total. This 0.67 is what you'll subtract the original number by the 13.39 minus the 0.67 to give us the 12.72 yards. This is our total, the final speed number. But in case you're not satisfied, I'll go ahead and check it for you. If you multiply the 12.72 yards per second by the number of seconds in the Netherwalk ability, which is 5 seconds, then you'll get a score about 63.6 yards that the ability covers in that 5-second interval. To double check this interval, we could take it a different route. How about that 2.24 seconds from earlier? We have 30 yards to account for that, so let's just get the remaining 2.76 seconds for that. If we take that 12.72 yards per second and multiply it by the 2.76, we get about a 35.11 yard from that. Add the 30 yards we get to it and we'll get about 65.11 yards. Are these numbers the same? Well, no, they're not, but keep in mind we rounded to 2.24 as well as getting the average for all the time calculations. Honestly, it's close enough to where the answer is sufficient, but since the actual numbers of 12.72 multiplied by 5 gives us the 63.6 yards, I'm going to say that that is the final number we get for distance. And just like that, we have our numbers for Netherwalk. 12.72 yards per second equaling to about 63.6 yards over 5 seconds. One down, one to go. Let's switch over to Demonic Trample. Things are about to get more interesting with this particular ability. You see, Demonic Trample, while it is technically a 3-second ability, can be used in back-to-back notions with one another. This means that the 2 charges of Demonic Trample it has should be calculated to a 6-second ability, not a 3-second one. To put it simply, Vengeance Demon Hunters have a 6-second, 175% movement speed at their disposal in the PvP universe. Who would have thought the world was coming to an end so soon? But hey, at least Mario can put back on some clothes now, so that's good. You know the drill by now. Here's a short footage of me doing Demonic Trample. I'm sure by this point you already know how I'm going to set up the charges, so let's just get straight on to the numbers with this one. These are the attempts made for Demonic Trample that I got, and boy oh boy do they blow the other ones out of the water. Ranging 30 yards in between a 1.5 and 1.7 second interval. Adding all these up and getting the average comes out to about a 1.6554 second number, or rounding it up to 1.66 seconds. The part of me feels like I'm not actually going to like the results of this because I believe an ability like this may actually be too overpowered for its own good, but let's go ahead and finish it up anyway. So we have our 2 numbers that can safely cover the speed. 30 yards over 1.66 seconds comes out to about an 18.07 yards per second. We can then take this 18.07 yards as a law since there is no outsiding factors for this one to make us believe otherwise. After that, we can take the 18.07 yards per second and multiply it by 6 seconds. The amount Demonic Trample can really cover to get a distance of 108.42 yards. To double check this, we need to see if we can replicate something real close to the number in another way. So if we take the 18.07 and multiply it by the remaining 4.34 seconds that we didn't cover in the test, then we get an 78.4238. At the 30 yards we did cover in the speed boost, and we do end up getting a 108.4238 yards, which is actually spot on to our previous endeavors, so there you go. The final numbers for Demonic Trample can be summed up as a speed of 18.0 yards per second, a time of 6 seconds, and a distance of 108.42 yards covered. Honestly, this is terrifying to think about in terms of speed boosts that can actually have a cooldown ability reduced from 20 seconds to 12 seconds with 1 perk, and be on recycle with 2 charges. So, how do the results hold up? Honestly, Netherwalk just can't compete with the overbearing power that Demonic Trample brings to the table. In all categories, speed, distance, and time, the Demonic Trample takes the cake, but for comparison's sake, let's get to the difference. First, it's the speed. If you take the 18.07 yards per second of Demonic Trample and subtract it by the 12.72 yards set by Netherwalk, you get a whopping 5.35 yards per second difference. It might not seem like much, but keep in mind that Demonic Trample can be used a lot more frequently than anything on the speed boost we've mentioned to this point, as it has a 12-second cooldown at the most versus the Netherwalk's 12-minute cooldown. For distance, we once again will subtract Netherwalk's 63.6 yards from Demonic Trample's 108.42 yards to get a staggering 44-point-yard differential. If you're trying to escape the Trample's grasp, good luck doing that with the difference in speed. And finally, even Demonic Trample has Netherwalk technically beat in terms of time, as if you use 2 of them back to back, the total of Demonic Trample's time is 6 seconds to Netherwalk's 5, meaning that the Demonic Trample has once more taken the cake by a measly 1 second. It's crazy, it's really brutal, and there was no contest here. Demonic Trample is extremely powerful in terms of speed, and the only ability that thus far has broken the sub 2 seconds. So, is Demonic Trample better than Netherwalk? On stats, absolutely, but situationally, really that could be up for debate. Ultimately, Netherwalk can be used in raids and instances and dungeons, whereas Demonic Trample has to stay within the PvP realms. Netherwalk also takes the cake in terms of survivability, allowing you to dissipate from being hit for 5 seconds. And another case that the Trample's groin is that Vengeance really isn't favored in PvP unless you're using it for flag carrying or flag spinning. Havoc overall is the better specialization for PvP gaming, and unless you're using Vengeance to cover it for a quick flag cap, I can't really see objectively taking a Vengeance Demon Hunter over a Havoc one. Even so, I want to know what you think. Down below, if you got to the end of this video, comment the phrase Bulldogs and enter your voice opinion on the matter. Subscribe if you like the content because I have more coming your way, and if you want to hear what's going on or updates on the channel, follow my Twitter or my Twitch channel. I'm usually active on both of those. Thank you for watching this, and expect Druids to be covered by the next week, which, oh boy, that's going to be a problem on its own. I'll see you then, and take care.